Welcome to this lesson on some more customary conversions. Today we're going to talk about those customary conversions where you actually have some units left over and what that would look like. Right, so we had previously talked about all of our different conversions and I put them all up here on the top of the first slide. Make sure that you have these written down and that you are practicing them. Also, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens when you work it out and it doesn't work out perfectly, and we don't want to turn it into a fraction or a decimal, but we actually want the answer as two different units. Right, so let's take this problem that we did previously about the elephant at the Milwaukee Zoo, and they need the information in tons and pounds if necessary. Right, so looking at this, we know that we know that they're looking for tons and pounds. So that's the question. And boxing important numbers, I'm actually going to cheat here and make a box that apparently has white edges so you can't see it. So let's try that again. There we go. So 2,600. And then we also know that we need to know that we're starting with pounds and going to tons and pounds if necessary. All right, so looking at this, we have to write down first that we're starting with 2,600 and that we're going to multiply that by a rate. So we have 2,600 pounds and we're multiplying that by the rate that's going to get us to tons. I know that there are 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. Since I want to get to tons, my rate would be 1 ton over 2,000 pounds, which actually means what I end up doing is taking that 2,600 and dividing it by 2,000. So I'm taking that 2,600 and putting it into groups of 2,000. When I do that, I end up with 1 ton because I end up with one group of 2,000, but I have 600 pounds left over. So instead of writing that as a mixed number like we normally would, where we would put 1 and 600 2,000ths. So instead of writing it like that, we want to write it and then just labeling it as tons. We actually are going to label it in tons and pounds. So we know that this is how many tons we've created. So I was able to make one group of 2,000. So I was able to make 1 ton. And then this remainder here, my leftover, is how many pounds I had left over, which is 600. So my answer in this case, what they would put on their sign would be 1 ton, 600 pounds. Okay, so instead of writing it as a fraction, it ends up being written in the two different units. You're able to create 1 ton, but you do have 600 pounds left over. All right, so we're taking it that second step. This is why we wrote it as a fraction previously. So you can see, oh, this numerator that I have, this leftover, actually is still pounds, and we can leave it in the answer as such, instead of saying 1 ton, 600 over 2,000 pounds. All right, so now we're going to look at this in terms of feet and inches. So Quinn knows that he is 58 inches tall. Typically, when you write a program out as a coach, you need to know the height in feet and inches. And inches is what we're looking for here. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, if you understand how to do this, I want you to go about trying it yourself. If you're still kind of working your way through it, what I would like you to do is I would first like you to figure out what is the rate that we're going to use. If you're comfortable and feel like you can just jump to if this is multiplication or division, go ahead, but then come back right away so you can check your work. All right, so first we know that we're starting with the 58 inches. Okay, and we know that we are going to feet and inches. We know that we are working with 58, and the reason I know that it's inches, These little quotes up here indicate inches when you're talking about numbers. So when you see those two little apostrophes or the what looks like a quotation mark, that means inches. All right, so I'm going from inches to feet. So I'm taking that 58 inches and I'm going to multiply it, and I'm going to use my rate of 1 foot equaling 12 inches. Since I want to get to feet, my feet are on top and my inches are on bottom. So if I was going to multiply, if I'm more comfortable setting up the rate still, which is absolutely fine, this is what it would look like. If I'm comfortable going straight to division, I could just say that I'm going to do 58 over 12, because that's what this ends up being, because you multiply straight across. 58 times 1, and underneath the 58 is 1, and 1 times 12 is 12, so you end up with 58 over 12. If you're comfortable enough, you can jump to the fact that you're already doing 58 divided by 12. When you do this, you get 4, and 12 times 4 is 48. When you subtract that, you get 10. So again, I'm taking that 58 inches and I'm putting it into groups of 12, because each group of 12 is 1 foot. I'm able to make 4 feet, but I have 10 inches left over. So when I write that as 4 feet. That's how many groups of 12 I was able to make, and 12 inches make a foot, so 4 feet, 10 inches. This is really important, especially when we end up with, like if you type it into a calculator and you get 12 and 5/10. So let's say that you get, for some reason you get 12 and 5/10. A lot of times students like to say, ooh, then this would be 12 feet 5 inches. But that's not the case. You have to remember that 12 and 5/10 means this, which is actually equal to 12 and 1/2. This half right here is actually half of a foot. So this is actually equal to 12 feet 6 inches. This is not like the metric system. You cannot just say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to swing my decimal. That's not how it works. So you have to be able to understand and talk about the long division aspect of it in order to figure out your leftover pieces. Okay, and one more. Again, if you feel like you understand it, I'd like you to try it. I gave one in each different type of measurement. So we did, first off, we started with weight, and then we did length, and now we're going to do capacity. All right, so we have Ivan, who is to empty his lawnmower for the winter. He knows that the meter on the tank says that he has 54 pints left. So I know that I'm starting with pints. The problem is, in order to have enough gas cans to store the excess gas, he needs to know how many gallons he has. And excess means the extra. So that's the gas that he has left over after a summer of mowing, because it never works out where you mow the lawn and you run out of gas and the winter comes. It just never works that way. So you know you have 54 pints, and that's what you're working with. And you have to go from pints to gallons. Well, again, we have to remember that we don't necessarily have a conversion written down, but I do know, I can go off to the side here and think, okay, I know 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. And I know that 1 quart equals 2 pints. So in each of these 4 quarts, so I can say that 1 gallon is equal to those 4 quarts times the 2 pints in each of the quarts, and I know that 1 gallon then would be equal to 8 pints. Okay, because again, inside of each of these quarts are 2 pints. All right, so to do this, again, you can set it up if you're more comfortable, start with your rate, otherwise jump straight to division. Okay, again, try putting the pieces together and going step by step with me, and try working through it as much on your own as you can. Okay, so first we're starting off with that 54 pints, and I'm going to multiply it by the rate of 1 gallon over 8 pints. When I multiply across, that ends up giving me 54 over 8. Since I know that that means I do division, that ends up giving me 54 divided by 8. So if you even wanted to start off by saying, I don't need to write it in multiplication, I just want to write that I do 54 and I divide it by 8, that's absolutely fine. If you're comfortable jumping to that step, that's great. If not, we're going to keep working and you'll get there. Again, the focus is on using rates, making sure we understand the rates, so no worries if you're not quite there yet. I know that 8 goes into 54 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48, which leaves me with 6 left over. So now I know that that gives me 6 gallons with 6 pints left over. So you have 3 problems again here on your own. And if you look at the second one, be sure to read carefully because we want to know how tall this is, and it is important to note that there's 2 numbers in here. And in this case, you might need 2 answers. Make sure you read carefully. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to email me or write them down so we can go over them in class.